I do cut off the end bits and then upload as a podcast episode because
Okay.
there's stuff there. But let me just double check. We should be live there. And cool. And let me just check my channel. Yay. Yep. And we are live on the channel as well.
All right.
So that is fantastic. And I'll just keep up to date with that as well. So we're talking about marketing stuff here and being a rule breaker and everything. Hopefully we have rule breaker people coming in here. It's going to be kind of marketing nerdy. Although we did start talking about Andor, so that happens too. I also have to say, and maybe I'm just in the minority, I really love Skeleton Crew. I do.
I did.
For a kid show, it hits every single note. Like,
yeah, it did. It had the Goonies vibes, adventure vibes. I liked it. I thought it
borrowed
was
the
good.
funnest things from Treasure Island, which is not the most interesting book, depending on who you're talking to.
No.
But it had the fun parts, and it had Jude Law just completely being like, I get to play the evil bad dude in a middle grade show. This is awesome.
That's right.
He just looked like he was having the best time.
He was. You could tell it was a fun show for him to just work in. So
yeah, just being the bad adult, which in a lot of middle grades you do have the bad adult, and he gets just to be the bad adult.
yeah, and that's always fun. So
yeah. So I think it's like, I think that's a matter of Disney has no idea how to market what they're doing. I think they're just doing way too many different genres and just throwing spaghetti at a wall, and people are getting really confused.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely seeing that with like Star Wars and Lucasfilm and some of the things they're doing. It's just like, okay, let's pick a story and a genre. And so I think animation works for one thing, and then you got to do this over here, and it's just like, they're back and forth.
Yeah, and again, they're not good at communicating with their audience. By the way, we do have people in the chat box, which is pretty awesome. And if you want to follow that, you can actually like bring it up on your phone or something because it's going to show up there as well with that. But hey, Jeanette's here. Hey, Jeanette. And Marilyn's here. That's fantastic. Glad you could make it. We're just having a quick chat. And actually, we're talking about Star Wars, which is not the focus of this live stream.
But we were talking about how they have a trouble marketing their product at times. So.
Yeah, they have really poor communication with their audience. If they just let people know, hey, this is for you to watch with your kids, this is for you to enjoy as a spy thing, and then just use their words. But they don't. They're just at the end. I think just getting Disney's just getting desperate and just shoving everything out there, and then people hate it. But it's like
I think they forgot how to tell a story in their marketing as well. And you put all these big budget movies and shows and things out on Disney Plus, and I think they've gotten to a point where they just expect everybody to come, but you still have to build that relationship with your viewer. And I think that's the difference between something like them and then what you see like Angel Studios doing over here and finding some success is there's different approaches to it to bring the audiences out, and I think they're just kind of missing that a little bit.
Yeah, they just really, I mean, there's a lot of things Disney's not doing very well right now, but I think that's one of them. I think they've just lost a sense of that storytelling aspect, which is something that I think even if you're being rebellious or anything, you need to know who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what are you trying to create with them, and go with that. And I think the only way it works if you're being rebellious or if you're being low, taking low risk things, is to know why you're doing it. And I don't see any intention behind what they're doing.
No. All
right. So we get more people showing up here. And again, they're probably kind of used to me actually showing up like later, although I'm seeing a couple more people. So shout out in the chat box. Let us know how you're doing. I mean, since we started with Star Wars, which I'm fine with, because I've unashamedly tweaked the marketing of this channel to just say part of this is just celebrating geek stuff because it makes me happy. What's your favorite Star Wars non-movie? So like we have the movies, of course, but like we're talking Clone Wars, we're talking Bad Batch, we're talking Skeleton Crew, we're talking, and we can do shows or you can do books, but they're the EU, the expanded universe, which I will always call it that. I don't care what they do.
I will too.
That's its own thing. So your favorite Star Wars visual, but not a movie.
Not a movie.
Not a movie.
I really enjoyed The Bad Batch.
Mhm.
I thought they did a lot in, and my kids enjoyed it too. But I
Mhm.
thought they did a lot of decent world building with that,
Mhm.
and I like the idea of certain clone troopers just sort of being rebellious and everything that goes with my
Yeah.
nature. But
Yeah.
uh, so I really like that. I loved Andor, but I loved
Mhm.
Andor mainly because I love just a good slow paced spy thriller,
Yeah.
and what I liked about that was how it was a different aspect of Star Wars where you did not have the Force. You didn't have to show the Emperor to show him stretching across the universe. People
Mhm.
feared it, and it was the devotion. And so I thought the down the earth world building was really good for Andor. Andor had its faults, but
Mhm.
I felt like there was a lot of different parts of it that I really dug. I loved Skeleton Crew because it was
Mhm.
just fun and
It
enjoyable.
it knew the assignment. They didn't know how to market the
Right.
assignment, but I just love
No.
seeing something that was so clearly middle grade in all the best ways that was just
Right.
fun.
Right, and it was just a fun adventure that you could just kinda sit down. You didn't have to take it too serious. You could
Yeah.
just enjoy it. And of course, as far as the expanded universe, obviously the Thrawn trilogy right
I
here.
mean,
That's
yeah.
where it starts. But I have so many other books that I've totally enjoyed. Cat the Truce at Precura by Kathy Tires. I will be
Mhm.
getting that signed at Railmakers this year. I did missed her a couple years ago and I couldn't get it signed. So that's one of my favorite ones. I love the Rogue Squadron series
Oh
and things
yeah.
like that. So some of those were some of my favorites and some of the ones that I enjoyed the most. So
Mhm.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
I wish they would have taken a lot more elements. But for its faults, and I think it was budget faults, I really enjoyed Kenobi. A lot of people
Mhm.
didn't. I
Ooh,
actually
that's yeah,
liked it.
that's an opinion. Wow.
That is an opinion, and I love. I mean, there were some things about it I didn't like, but I love seeing the tension and the fight scenes between Vader and Kenobi. I felt like it was good. I liked it. A lot of people didn't, and that's fine. That's just my
Mhm.
opinion. I enjoyed it. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, definitely Grand Andor in terms of as a spy thriller, it was exceptionally well done. This is someone
mhm.
who I do watch a lot. This is one of my favorite like genres of TV to watch because it's just so much you get so much for the acting and everything
Yeah,
and the tension and the pacing with that. If anyone's like, "Well, how do you learn pacing?" I'm like, "Mostly spy things and that kind of stuff. How do you find out how to draw out those small moments?" Um I think that they could have foreshadowed the Force stuff a little bit more. I think they could have done a little I
yeah.
mean, I think it came out I understand what they were doing, but I felt like you could have done a little bit of foreshadowing with
hmm
that, just a bit. I think that they sometimes had a few too many and I love morally gray characters, I do.
Yeah,
They had a lot. I
they
think
did.
it became a little bit one note by the end, but it was again, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Skeleton Crew was great for what it was. I don't expect it to be more. I've actually was pleasantly surprised by it. I like that they actually chose kid actors who could decently act okay and acted like fifth graders, had
yeah,
fights like fifth graders. So if you're frustrated by their fights, that's how fifth graders fight. Like,
yeah,
um, it doesn't logic all the time. And there's one, of course, I liked the first season of The Mandalorian because I
yeah. The
it's a
first
West.
season was great.
First
Yeah.
season was really great. There's one show that I wish it had been better, and I wanted it in the parts I've liked, and that's Ahsoka.
Oh yeah,
I,
yeah.
I I had potential, and I thought it was okay, but there were parts I'm like, this could be really good. I liked the idea of someone who, the idea of force being cultivated, the idea of someone again
hmm
being rebellious, saying, "I'm going to choose someone who doesn't have that obvious thing and say they can get it
Yeah,
anyway." I like that idea, but I felt like they didn't realize it enough, and I hated what they did with Thrawn. I don't, I just
yeah. I
they
I
put in middle aged Thrawn. I'm like, what are we doing, guys?
I
Thrawn is
know, and Thrawn's such a logical character, and I felt like
yeah.
as far as the logical side, felt like they sort of nailed, but I felt like the arrival of Thrawn
Mhm.
was somewhat of a letdown,
It
and
really
that's
was.
that's just me. Thrawn is such a unique character. We could debate Thrawn all night long,
Mhm.
but there were things I liked about Thrawn. There were some things I didn't like about him. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it could have been just a little bit better.
Mhm. Yeah. And then for books, I mean, the the tales of the dot 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 books, I would say, were the first
Oh
books that really taught me how to do characterization quickly. Some of those books had exceptionally good fast characterization, where when you have that short space, you have to pull together world building and everything else really quickly and tightly. And it did a great job with that. I loved all of those. And I've read a lot of them, but that was just something that stuck out to me, was just how tightly some of those stories were written.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like Corin Horn. I like Die Jedi. You know, it just
Yeah.
again, sort of a Maverick thing of just like, you know, he shows up. He's like, I'm gonna do it this way because Corellian Jedis don't listen to you guys. We don't care. Maybe it's like an American thing. We just don't care. We're like, we want the guy that like is like, nah, I'm gonna get married. You don't control me. So looking in the comments here, I have like Bad Batch is fun. Adam, good to see you here. Like Andor hasn't seen season 2. Season 2 has a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff in it. It really does.
Yeah. And Adam also enjoyed Kenobi, so I'm not alone in
Yeah.
that. So
There
yeah.
we go. In the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, Mandalorian is like the show that helped resurrect the Star Wars culturally relevant meme. It really
Yeah.
did. Like Grogu, just in a nutshell, made Star
Yeah.
Wars relevant in memes
That
again.
that that first scene at the end of the first episode was just like iconic, and you're just like,
Yes.
what in the world? And then it was very well done. So
Mm-hmm.
first 2 seasons of Andor I like, or Mandalorian I like. Third season I couldn't really figure out what they were wanting to do.
I
So
think the world building fell apart a little bit too,
yeah.
because what they built in the first one was a great classic sort of um, stereotypical archetypal world
Hmm.
building. But if you look at it too closely and start to build out too much nuance, and it kind of goes, why are we doing this again, or what's going on
Yeah.
here? I think there's some things where maybe it shouldn't get a third season because it ruins the archetypal sense of that Western
Yeah.
if you look at it too closely and you start thinking like, but why did they do this? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, so looks like we have a good bunch showing up, and hopefully more will show up here. And again, give us shout outs in the comments as we're talking about different things, especially if you have questions about stuff, marketing things, etc. We're here to talk. And we are going to get started on this live stream of the Author Culture podcast and YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to have the fantastic JJ Johnson here. I had him on previously under a different podcast because I've done 4 of those. Because this is what you do. Back when I was a little more focused on just all of the author help side of stuff, and now I've really come full circle back to my science fiction roots and still talk about marketing and stuff, but science fiction and fantasy is my jam with that. So thank you for coming on the show again, JJ.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Especially with how crazy things are with rail makers.
Yeah, they're insane right now.
And for anyone who's not sure what rail makers or what's going on, you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know it's taking up all your life right now, and they know that my audience is. I've been busy with it because I just did an episode about
Yeah.
my prep for it. So what's going on with that this year?
Well, Realm Makers has changed, and for full disclosure, I'm director of marketing for Realm
Yeah.
Makers, so I'm working for Scott and Becky now, and we have launched the I think it is the 13th annual conference this year,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as the conference is concerned, we have record numbers this year. Everything is looking great. We
Mm-hmm.
have we're mingling with the Christian Game Developers Conference as well. So they're going to be joining us, but they'll be sort of doing their own conference. And then we have our conference going on. And then we're launching the Realm Makers Expo, which is pretty much just like a giant fan con for Christian creators who write animation, comic books, filmmaking, all sorts of different things. Uh, it's over 140 exhibitors are joining us, and it's taking place at the DeVos Place in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we've kind of matured. Right? When you and I started going to Realm Makers, we were still in like
Oh
college
yeah.
dorms on a college campus, and it was like it's like the most uncomfortable night of sleep you ever had, and
You
we
had
were
you
eating
really
in like
tired. Yeah.
right, yeah, we were eating in cafeterias and stuff
Cafeteria
like
food. Yeah.
cafeteria food, and it was intimate and fun because there's only like 100 to 150 of us, all right,
Mm-hmm.
but we slowly have grown up to the conference center in a hotel, and that's where we started in 2017 in Reno, and we've
Mm-hmm.
been in a conference center type, with hotel since that. Now we're moving up to a
Mm-hmm.
actual convention center.
Yep.
So we've kind of matured a little bit. We're going to have the largest gathering we've ever had, and it's just insanely busy because not only are we doing all the programming for the conference side of things, we're also doing all the programming for the expo as well. And it takes two different planning teams and just a lot of meetings and just a lot of information to get out. It's exciting, it's nerve wracking, it's a step of faith, but it's just amazing being behind the scenes and seeing all these threads come together. And when you're sitting here, like a week or two ago, I was telling you earlier, I
Yep.
had my doubts. I had, and my anxiety was up here. I was like, we're not
Hmm.
going to pull this off. Nobody's going to come. And then things just fall into place. And you can't help but know that
Hmm.
God's hand is in this. And if anything, we are in an incredible position to launch another one next year, just
Yay.
with where things are going. So I'm really confident we're going to have an incredible expo, and it's going to be great. We got all sorts of amazing people coming as special guests too.
I am so excited to be there. It has been a real trip, like seeing Realm Makers grow and change all throughout this time, and to now have again an expo and a conference, which is great. It's really where it needed to be too. So I really feel like even though it's a big step, it also is a logical step because,
Hmm.
again, this has been around for 10 years. So a lot of authors who've been there from the beginning now really don't have the same need for especially
Yeah,
like introductory or even intermediate author help the way they
yeah,
do. They need more advanced stuff or they need more specialized stuff, which is one of the things where rebel marketing works better when you're especially when you're not a beginner anymore. You really like, okay, I can't just
yeah.
do cookie cutter stuff. I tried that, it's not working for me. So I like to see them expanding and opening up different opportunities for that. And yeah, hopefully if you're listening to this and you can show up, that would be great because it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're gonna dive right into the topic now, which when you pitched this, I absolutely loved it. It's like, okay, this is how you live. It also makes sense for what I do here. So you understood the assignment. And so we're talking about rebel marketing and what that means or doing low risk marketing. First thing, of course, I want to say is let's define it a little bit because I
Hmm.
think there's a difference between just being intentionally reckless or
Yeah.
intentionally rebellious and just doing random stunts and saying, well, this is me being rebellious. And it's like, oh, no, I think you're just not putting enough thought into that. Or I think you're just being foolish with that. Like if you thought 2 seconds, there's a certain amount of strategy, I think, involved even when you're
Hmm.
being rebellious. So when we're talking about, rebel marketing or like drawing outside the lines, what are we really talking about here?
Well, I think what we're talking about is looking at the things that happen in marketing, and
Hmm.
so you have strategies,
Right.
and concepts, and certain strategies work for certain publishing trends or certain genres or certain people. And the thing I think happens sometimes is a lot of people come along and say, "Well, this is what you have to do,"
Hmm.
because they see it working for others. And rebel marketing is just kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, let's look at this from a logical standpoint and
Hmm.
let's think this through. Is there something different that I can do that will allow me to stand out just a little bit better, that's opposite of what everybody else is doing, but is
Hmm.
also not something that is completely reckless at the same time. And
Hmm.
so it's really about thinking, okay, how can I be just a little different, but at the same time flip these concepts and these strategies on their head and do something a little different that doesn't necessarily just tank your career. And
Hmm.
so I think some people just think rebel marketing is about necessarily breaking the rules. Yeah, I say let's go break the rules because I love breaking rules. But at the same time, when I look and I approach something and I say, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm thinking about it from a logical standpoint. I'm taking back, I'm studying what other people have done that may be similar. And
Hmm.
then I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go try this for myself and I'm going to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to own up and say this was a bad idea. But 9 times out of 10, what I find that it ends up working because it ends up working for me. Uh, because sometimes I think what people don't realize is sometimes the best marketing is the marketing that works for you, not necessarily the marketing that's working for everybody else. So it's about
Hmm.
taking risk that are calculated, but also
Hmm.
don't cost you a lot of money as well. So,
Yeah, yeah. So I love how you combine that. It's called don't put like $500,000 on something super risky during a risky
yeah.
time. You like we're not advocating that, unless you have that much money to spare, in which case you should just be hiring out your marketing, like if you can bankroll that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a lot of indie authors, especially who are on small budgets, and even when you're profitable, your margins are smaller,
Hmm.
you're always looking for ways that you can get more bang for your buck. And that
Yeah.
can be either financially or in energy, so that you're not doing something high energy intensive, so you're not writing your books, but it's that marketing's working, but you have no time to create, and then
All
that
right.
kind of is a self-defeating
Yeah.
purpose there. So we're talking about that, and we're talking about this idea of doing something a bit different versus playing it safe. Is there one sort of safe marketing tip or something that you've heard said over and over again in groups that you just go, "Oh, someone said that again like it was one of the 10 commandments."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't really work in this situation or this or this or this, but they keep repeating it. Is there one tip or trick that you've heard a lot that you're like, "Oh, this is one you need to
I think.
reconsider"?
Yeah. Well, I don't. Let's take Amazon ads for a minute.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this is an easy one. Everybody
Mhm.
says learn Amazon ads. Learn Amazon ads. Learn Amazon ads. The problem with Amazon ads is you have to think about Kindle readers.
Mhm.
And there are several different types of Kindle readers. You have just the regular reader that just has a Kindle and occasionally reads. Then you
Mhm.
have a reader that loves to read and they buy everything of their favorite author. They buy the hardback, they buy the ebook, they buy all that. Then there's the third type of reader, and that's really sort of the addictive reader. That's the
Mhm.
binge reader. Now
The
we love
KU
those.
readers, yeah.
Yes, the KU readers. Now, if you're writing in a genre that's really hot in KU, and this is the obviously the right to market strategy,
Mhm.
the rapid release model. And this is
Right.
what people were preaching for so long. And if you're writing in that market and you're writing, let's say post-apocalyptic fiction, EMP explodes, you're trying to survive. That was a hot genre. All right. Let's say it's the Battlestar Galactica type, military sci-fi genre. That was a hot
Mhm.
genre. Romance has tons of subgenres that are hot in KU. And so if you're writing in one of those markets and you're running Kindle ads, you're probably going to have some success if, and this is where the if is, and this is what they don't tell you, if you can keep feeding those addictions. And
Yep.
so what you have to do is start releasing quickly. I know people that were releasing a book a month and writing
Mhm.
6 to 7,000 words per day. I know some people that were releasing every other month. And the problem with that is they got to a point to where it was no longer about writing and creating art. It was
Mhm.
more about the publishing and just feeding constantly. And they ended up getting burned out. And you know what?
Yep.
I'm not saying this about every author out there, but some of those authors are now using certain tools to help them write their books. And so what you and I that's not a subject I want to get involved in. It's
Yeah.
a subject I'd rather stay away from, but that's what they're doing in order to keep up with the madness. So if you're doing that, if you're doing the rapid release and you have 4 or 5 series that are in one of these hot genres and you're running your Kindle ads, you're probably going to have some success. The other problem with that is you're not really building fans
Mhm.
because what you're doing is you're hitting genre fans who just want their next fix. And yes, they may read some of the same books that you other books you write, but if you cross over to a different genre or if you write something completely different, there's a 90% chance they're not going to follow you
Mhm.
because they're not really true fans of you. They're true fans of the books in this genre that you put out. I don't like that method of publishing because I think what it does is it makes it about publishing model instead of creating art and
Mhm.
creating stories that are lasting and impactful and things like that. So when I tell people, look, when you want to do Amazon ads, you have to first ask yourself the question, is my book going to be one of those books that does successful on Amazon ads? And if it's a standalone, it may be able to find for some of the readers and you may get some return on your investment, but there's a very good chance that your die-hard readers might not necessarily be those Kindle readers, and you need to rethink where you invest your ad money at. And
Mhm.
so I know people who have spent lots of money on a certain Amazon ad course, and then they never saw any sort of
Mhm.
return on their investment, simply because of the fact that their readers weren't necessarily on that. And so that's one piece of tips, I think, that just kind of drives me nuts. It's just like, you don't need to spend all this money on learning these ads and things like that. You need to be
Mhm.
spending your time thinking about whether or not your actual readers are in the place where the ads are actually going to end up being effective.
Yeah, and that's just a timeless truth about marketing that I think is so easy to lose
Hmm.
when we're thinking about the latest trick or the latest tip. And the thing is, I think one of the things that makes this a little bit difficult is there are some really big, successful full-time authors who are using that strategy, who are bringing in AI now for that. And I believe in some cases they really have gone in and decided to, speaking just purely objectively here,
Hmm.
they've gone for fast food fiction. And with AI,
Right.
you can now make fast food fiction. Before, I mean, I heard even people writing books in 2 weeks and cranking them out, but then you get burned out really fast for that.
Yeah.
And then they would make, hundreds of thousands of dollars and then like have to take 6 months off. But with AI now, they have an easier way of making that fast food fiction, which is very much a business model. They're not approaching it as an artist. And even if you ask them if they are enjoying it, they're enjoying it in the way that you enjoy creating a product to make money, not in the way of expressing something particularly unique. And then I'm not saying anyone should get defensive about this, but I think people should just be honest about what they're getting out of it with
Right.
that. Like,
Yeah.
understand, I am showing up as a producer. I am showing up as a content creator producer. I am not showing up as someone who is trying to create new ideas or engage with readers. I'm just going to produce things the way that McDonald's produces a hamburger that a lot of people like. Okay.
Yeah.
Like if anyone says, well, I don't want a McDonald's, I'm like, well, McDonald's is making a ton of money and has lots of people who just want the burger. So if that's, it's not necessarily a degrading thing to say, but it's understanding where you fit in this whole market. But if you don't want to be that way, and I believe in the future, you're going to probably have to adopt a lot of AI to compete in that model, because I
Hmm.
believe everyone is going to do that. Like anyone who's doing a producer model, you kind of have, once certain people are going to use AI to stay competitive, because in that entrepreneurial field, it's about staying competitive. They're thinking about the bottom line. And if you're all about staying competitive as a producer of fiction, you're going to have to adopt AI or you're going to get left behind because everyone
Right.
else is. So if you don't want to be a fiction producer, not a writer, a producer, a content co-creator with AI, if that's not what you want to do, then you have to forge your own path and continue with connecting with readers in your own way. And so
Hmm.
you can't listen to the people who are thinking about writing as a production. And
Right.
if you hear someone who's constantly saying, well, what do your readers want? What do they want? And they're asking that 24/7. I'm not saying you shouldn't care about readers. We're all talking relationships here, and JJ's going to talk about some great ways to build those relationships authentically. But if they're asking about what your readers want, that is not a writer question. That is a business person question from Shark Tank. And
Right.
that's great. But that means you belong on Shark Tank. That means that you're
Right.
not really in the same field as a creator who's trying to connect. You're in the field of a business producer producing a product and listening to people and giving them exactly what they want until that changes and then you ditch it, which I like Shark Tank. I listen to it, and people
Yeah.
like, they have a company and a couple years they sell it and do another company and a couple years they sell it. That's how they do. But if that feels weird and false to you, that's because that's not really the way you thought about writing and
Right.
building those relationships. That's how people think in the business world when they're producing a retail product to
Yeah.
hit a niche and then move on to the next thing and ditch what they didn't do before. That's just how they work. And I think you would agree with this. I think, well, you can make money that way. I'm not going to tell
Yeah.
people not to do that. It's a free country.
You can make a lot of money.
You can make a lot of money, but I think that you are missing out on something that makes writing special.
Hmm.
And I think that you're wasting a bit of time, honestly, because there's so many other businesses where you can create products and make money faster and better. If you want to do that, why not just do it in something that isn't uniquely geared towards building relationships and connecting
Right.
with people? Like, it just feels silly to me, the same way it's like, well, it's mass produced art. And I'm like, you can do that, but that it's art.
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
Well, and a lot of those, and nothing against these authors. There's some very
Yeah, no,
successful
they're very
authors
successful,
that are
very
doing
lovely
this,
people, but they're just doing it
but
differently.
they're doing it differently. And what I say is that model doesn't necessarily work for everybody. Not
It
everybody
doesn't.
can crank out a book that fast all the
Mhm,
time. And so my approach to marketing,
mhm,
and I learned this by experimenting with all these things that we're talking about. I experiment with ads. I experiment with Facebook ads. I experiment with I failed miserably at TikTok. I mean, I tried all these things, and I came down to just looking at my philosophy of marketing, and I just looked at what the basic concepts of how to market your product and your brand, and I
mhm.
just narrowed it down to 3 steps, and it's
Yep.
nothing that's necessarily groundbreaking. It's the same 3 steps that Seth Godin recommends, or
Yep.
Gary Vee, or even, Tim Grohl. I mean, it's basically, I call it like the campfire method, because what I like the way I like the analogy I like to give is, you're building a fire, you're inviting people to come and sit down, and now we're having story as a community.
Mhm,
And to me, I think when you take these 3 steps approach, and this is the same way I market realm makers as
mhm,
well. I use the same 3-step approach when I'm marketing, to just sort of do whatever I can to make things successful. Now, there's certain strategies you do within each step, but for the most part, it's really simple. You don't have to, but it is a long game approach. It's
mhm,
not the quick fix. It's not fast food. I mean, it is, you're building something over time that's sustainable. And I think that's what some people are missing whenever they try the
mhm,
rapid release model, because you don't always necessarily build a lasting fan base with rapid release.
mhm.
You build genre readers, and sometimes those don't last.
Yeah, and again, it can be difficult, and I know authors who do this, and they do it very well, and they have a totally different mindset, and that's
Right.
cool. But I think, as you mentioned, there are a lot of individuals, including, I would say, me and you, who that doesn't work for, and there are other that doesn't mean that if you're not willing to use that method, that you can't break even, be profitable, achieve the success that you want. You have to have different focuses. You have to do things differently, rebelliously, a little more creatively.
Yeah.
But you can still find success with that. It's not a zero sum game, an either or thing where you either do it this exact way or you just fail and you're
Yeah.
never going to get it again. And so and we're talking about that. And I love the idea of the campfire thing. I think that's more of an attraction style of marketing, which I love that kind of stuff, like, showing up and saying, isn't this great? Come into this community,
Hmm.
versus always trying to directly target felt needs
Hmm.
constantly, building a community around different values or around, mutual things everyone has in common.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about that and building that kind of community, talking about what you've done, of course, because this is what you do with your own marketing, what are some more low cost, kind of low risk marketing moves that people could consider as opposed to something a little more traditional? What are some things people could think about instead of just the traditional thing of, well, get on this social media and do this
Hmm.
here?
Well, I think the first thing is, a lot of people start out by chasing strangers, and really what you
Mhm.
should be doing is chasing conversations.
Mhm.
Um, my first thing that I do is I market to my community.
Mhm.
That's the first thing I do. That's the easiest marketing. Now, I know there's people out there say, JJ, I don't have a community. My first readers were my wife, her 2 sisters, her mom, my mom, and 2 friends. 7 people. All right. And they were the first people to buy my short story. I made them all buy it. All right. I didn't. I wasn't going to give it away for free, but they went and told 4 or 5 other people, and then those people started reading the book and stuff like this. So I think one of the things that you can do is start building. You know, I think you need to nurture your readers like they're some sort of insiders at a secret club or something like that,
Mhm.
because really they are. And how you choose to do that, whether it's through certain strategies where you're giving away things that they can't get anywhere else, that's perfect. Let me give you an example. So, we
Mhm.
put a lot of thought into running a Kickstarter, right?
Mhm.
Anytime we launch a book, we launch a Kickstarter. And one of the things that we do, we have 2 different types of things. We have backer perks and we have stretch goals. Okay. And we go as far as creative as we can get to get these backer perks and these stretch goals, and give away digital rewards. And my thought is, why do we only do this and take this a creative approach whenever we're just launching a Kickstarter? Why can this not be a part of our monthly marketing that we're trying to do for our book? So what I'm saying is like think of something that you can give away that's a digital low cost reward to your readers that they can find or they can get
Mhm.
and give it away to them in a way, whether it's on your newsletter. And I'm not talking about just the short story, because that's the
Mhm.
typical thing that everybody goes to. Oh, I'm going
Yeah.
to give away a short story. I'm talking about get creative. Maybe it's like a menu from the tavern inside of your fantasy book,
Mhm.
or a bounty poster or something like that if you're writing space pirates or something.
Mhm.
Do things that make them feel like they're getting something that they've never get before. So
Mhm.
I said this the other day. You don't, and I think I said it on Substack. You don't really
Yep.
need a bigger audience. You just need a better relationship with the one you've got.
Yep.
And so, if you only got 10 people listening to you, then deliver valuability to them, if instead of trying to go viral. And I think that's what a lot of people do is when they approach marketing, they approach it trying, well, I'm going to do this reel and I'm going to go viral. Well, no,
Mhm.
if you only got 10 people reading your stuff, deliver them value, deliver them freebies that constantly
Yep.
feeds them all the time and makes them feel like they're special. And
Mhm.
one of the things I did is I put up my audiobook, and the first thing I did is I said, okay, there's a secret code in my newsletter, and I'm gonna put my newsletter out, and I put my newsletter out every week. That's one
Yeah,
way I bring.
same. I love doing I just went to weekly and the difference was amazing.
Yeah,
Just building that connection. Again, also reducing what you put in it.
right, right,
So, because people, we just one thing a week, it becomes just an email from a friend instead of like this
right,
just monthly dump of just all
right.
this random stuff.
Yeah, I switched to weekly, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's a bad idea. Do it monthly. Do it quarterly. People don't want to receive." I have seen a 10% growth this year in subscribers just by being somebody who emails on a weekly basis. And
Mhm.
so, have I lost subscribers? Sure. Some people just don't like getting emails, and that's fine. But I try to deliver value in my email on a weekly basis. I tried to make a chat that people can join. Not everybody enjoys the chat. Not
Mhm.
everybody hops in every single week, but I tried to do those things. And I I put a secret code in there one time, and I said, "Hey, there's a secret code in my newsletter, and the first 5 people that find it get a free audiobook."
Mhm.
And so I have people messaging me all the time saying, "Is this the secret code?" No, that's not the secret code. Have you read the Iggy and Oz stories? If you've read the Iggy and Oz stories, you'll know. And then people were like, "Well, I didn't read the last one." I was like, "Well, it kind of contains the last one, so they go buy the last
Yeah.
one." You know, and I gave away all 5 audiobooks. There are things like that that you can do. There are low cost investments that deliver value to your community. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of rapid release models don't necessarily do, is
Mhm.
you want to market to your community. We do this all the time at Realm Makers.
Yep.
Everything that happens in the realm sphere is us marketing to our community. It
Mhm.
is us delivering value to our community and thanking them for their Patreon support. That's the first step that we ever do, is market to our community. So even if you
Mhm.
only have 20, 30, 40, 50 people, market to them. Build that trust, build that relationship, because guess what? You're going to need them before you know it to get your next book out.
Mhm. Mhm. I absolutely love that, and it's so true that, especially if you want that longevity of that relationship and just creating that sense of loyalty with your readers, you people listen to people that they get the whole know, like, and trust thing. I think that's never going to go out of
Yeah,
style. And I was listening to a podcast today, and they're like, I heard somewhere say, "Oh, don't like buy from people you know. That's nepotism." No, of course, we always buy from people we know. Like we
right.
always we hire people that we're familiar with, that we can trust with things. There's nothing wrong with that. And so having something exclusive like that builds it up, and then to sort of demystify the idea of everyone says, oh, it's like a funnel, like you give them a freebie at the
Yeah.
top and it's very clinical. And I think what makes things different and what makes them more rebellious, more low risk, but rebellious. And also, I think actually aligns with the Christian faith is that we're giving because we actually like them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we actually like our readers. People who like our books probably like similar things that we do, or at least they like similar things in the stories. Or with
Yeah.
your Iggy and Oz books, these are people who are like, "Wow, I like this for my kid. You really have impacted my kid's life and everything. I'm so glad for that." And so there is a mutual connection there. So
Right.
build on that and talk about that, because they're there, especially if they choose to sign up and stay on your email newsletter or wherever you have that exclusive area. They're there because they want to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, give
Yeah.
them things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We think that in marketing, in book marketing, we're taught all the time the game is selling books. The game's not selling books. The game is actually building trust, just like
Hmm.
you said. And that's what we need to really do. And as believers, when we build trust with our readers and we build that relationship, it's going to lead to more sales down the road.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Actually, again, I was this podcast. I was had this new book that came out called Give to Grow, and I'm pretty sure it was like by a
Mm,
Christian businessman. I haven't read it, so it's by
yeah.
Mo Bunnell. If you don't like it, don't blame me. I haven't read it yet, but the podcast was very interesting, and it was very much about. It's all about growing by building relationships, and I think very much, especially in the age of AI, people
Yes.
want to see that more. And it's been interesting because for a while it was like, how professional does your Instagram look? How professional do your photos look? And I'm seeing more and more now, and I think especially with myself as a on the reader side of things, I want to see things that are messy because I can
Yeah.
spot hyper realistic AI and it turns me off. Like
Well,
I wanna see things that are within reason. I want to see that I'm connecting with a person, not
yeah.
just a product or a funnel or something very automated. I want to know that I'm actually connecting with someone real.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the same is true about your copy too.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you write that is like, hey, I'm sharing my book. Don't write in professional copy. That's the first thing I tell people. Write
Mm-hmm.
in your voice,
Yep.
because people want to see authenticity, especially in a day where AI. If that means you're messy in your voice, be messy. If that means you're
Mm-hmm.
chaotic, be chaotic. Write in your voice, and don't worry so much about being professional. Now, when I'm marketing Realm Makers, of course, we're presenting products
It's
to
different. Yeah.
strangers. It's different. We're going to write in a more professional voice, but there's times where we put something out there, and guess what? We're just being messy, because sometimes messy is what connects with people, and that's what matters. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid don't be perfect in your sales copy. Sales copy can kill your ads and kill your posts quicker than anything else, because it screams unauthentic to people. And right now with AI, it's all over the place. You want to be the person that stands out, and the best way you can stand out is just be yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. So we're talking about this more and doing like this low cost, low risk stuff, which again, it doesn't have to be very much. As I switched over to doing weekly, which for me, because I do so much, weekly happened when I hired someone to help me. And so I just get to, I write out my messy copy and that person turns it into a newsletter. And that's
Yeah.
how I was able to do that because I have a lot of books and stuff and I can't do it myself. But when I started doing that, it didn't take much. It was like, hey, here's a promo sale. Hey, here's an excerpt of what I'm writing. Hey, here's something I did here. And that's people like, you don't always have to give away like
Hmm.
a gift card every email. And actually, I think
All
these
right.
days, because so many big corporations are doing the gift card giveaway thing, I mean, I love a good gift card, but it's not as personal. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean as much. And then with people being, some people are very, Amazon gift cards used to be the gold. And now with people, certain people, I have readers that will do not buy from Amazon. And so they love that I have a
Yeah.
direct sales store because they don't want to buy from Amazon. So,
Yeah, I agree, and I think direct to consumer sales is a good way.
mhm.
I'm big on this. You know
Yes,
me.
yeah.
I love direct to consumer sales, because I think you can do things. It's like an extension of your Kickstarter. You can do things on your direct to consumer store that you can't necessarily do in other places. Now, the only caveat is if you're not doing drop shipping. If you're doing
Mhm,
drop shipping and you're partnering with a printer, it may be a little bit more difficult. But if you're ordering books and you're having stock on hand and you're going to be doing book boxes or something like that for Christmas and things like that, that direct to consumer sales, I think, is a great way to do it. And
mhm.
it's a great way to make it different and make it matter to your community.
And I think one small way before we're going to go into a little more of what this looks like and how, of course, we still don't show up on every platform, which that is a thing that, people constantly say don't show up
Yeah.
on every platform. People still get stressed out about that. But real quick with the direct sales thing, if you're looking for one untapped thing that you're probably not doing, even if you're in Kindle Unlimited, which right now, but for most of
Mhm.
my titles, it's urban fantasy and fairy tales. I do fine in Kindle Unlimited. I have someone who manages my Amazon ads and make sure they don't run away, but it works for me because I know those readers are there. And
Yeah.
I have data and proof that they do cross over between my different genres, and I have defined what that is. But get your paperbacks wide, even if it's just through
Mm.
Dapta Digital. It's super easy, and you can even just, I mean, if it's like an extra $15 a month or something,
Yeah.
because your paperbacks do not have to be exclusive through Amazon.
Mm.
And if you can get an ISBN, that's great. I buy my own. If you don't, you can still get it up there with the Dapta Digital ISBN. It's super easy, and it it gets you wide with that,
Yeah.
which is something. That is something. Even if you're like everything else is too big, at the very least, don't have just your paperbacks be on Amazon. There's no reason to do
Right.
that these days because
Yeah.
we have Drafted Digital.
Yeah, and I don't want to scare anybody away from going to Kindle Unlimited. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
middle grade for me just
That
doesn't
makes
work.
no sense.
No, it just doesn't. It just doesn't. I mean, I've tried it and it failed miserably.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, there are certain genres that just
Mm-hmm.
the best bet is Kindle Unlimited. That's
Mm-hmm.
just the way it is. And I hate saying that because I hate seeing somebody dominate the market. But I also know that if it's probably the best success for somebody to have their books in Kindle Unlimited. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid of Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, you have, again, going back to the beginning, you have to know what works for your area and be really sure about that. Not all my books are in KU. My urban
Yeah.
fantasy is, because that's what works for that. When I
Oh,
have more
that's
finished
hot there.
series, yeah, if I have more finished series, maybe I might try to pull it out and do a wide with a direct, those ebook bundles or something if I have the time. But that doing that could take more time from writing, which I actually enjoy more than running a giant online store. But I don't have my Rother resources on Kindle Unlimited. This makes no sense. Like, people want
Yeah,
to
I
buy
agree.
those. Like, why would I do that? So we're talking about all these things, and we're talking about the email newsletter, which, yes, we are believers in the email newsletter. Even if you're like, I'm scared, MailerLite, Substack. If you're really scared, Substack is free. It's a great way to get your feet wet.
Mhm,
There are ways to do it. ConvertKit has now a free thing. It
mhm.
gives you a way of just owning your platform a bit more, and you want to be able to do that. And if you're still want to get your feet wet and start with Substack, at least there you have consent to email them in their inboxes. So if you want to move to ConvertKit and off Substack, you can do that because you still have their consent, which is
Right.
why we want to keep in compliance with all of those laws. But with that, and people are thinking about where they need to be, what have you done with that that's different?
Well, all right. So for me personally, I
Mm-hmm.
still tune into to X and Facebook for Realm Maker stuff because
Mm-hmm.
I need to be there for those things. But for my personal brand and my personal marketing, it is strictly Substack and it is strictly Instagram. I
Mm-hmm.
will allow the posts that I put on Substack to go to my Facebook page. Okay. I have that figured out and I do that. And that's because I still have Facebook people over on Facebook that follow me. And to be honest with you, I am marketing to middle grade or to
Yeah.
mothers
You're
who
marketing to
have kids
moms. Yeah.
and they are on Facebook. And so
Yep.
I run my ads on Facebook.
Mhm.
But I spend my time engaging with people on Instagram and and Substack. Now I like Substack. I'm a geeky guy. I've been on there since 2022. I was early on there and I enjoyed it. Do I like everything that Substack does? No. But I think Substack allows me to streamline a lot of things. Is it the only place I'm ever going to put my eggs in that one basket? No, because Substack could fold. Like, you know, 10 years ago Twitter was the place to be. I mean, everybody was on Twitter. And then all of a sudden, now a lot in our community aren't necessarily on Twitter. Some are on Instagram, some are on TikTok, some are on Facebook. So I think you just have to find the place that works for you and your personality. And I think what I have found and what I've seen in the data is that people navigate over
Mhm.
eventually. And what I like about Substack is the newsletter. My open rates have actually gone up since I moved over to Substack. When I was over on the Mailchimp, my open rates were
Oh, well,
like,
MailChimp is like,
oh,
I just refuse to even like deal with that. Like,
I have a very love hate relationship with Mailchimp, and so but when I moved over to Substack, that's where things just started taking off for me, and I started growing my platform over there a lot more organically. I love the different features that you can do with Substack. And let's not forget, there is Patreon too. There's a lot
yeah,
of people that are just on Patreon. There's
yeah.
things like Royal Road. believe it or not, where people are
Mm-hmm.
serializing their novels and
Mm-hmm.
then they're funneling them into their Patreon for advanced chapters. So there are different strategies to work that aren't necessarily on social media. You have to explore what works in your genre. If you're writing lit RPG, you probably need to be over on Royal Road right now
I was
because
thinking of
that's
Seth Ring with his stuff. I think he's on Ream or something, but yeah, the
he's on
similar. Yeah.
Ream. He's
Yep.
on Reams, and and
He's doing
Seth
it.
is one. He's doing it. And guess what? Seth is not active on Facebook and
No.
Instagram as much. I mean, he's not doing the reels. He's not doing the stories.
Yeah, he
He's
has
not doing the
people I think that help him too with that, which is
yeah,
smart.
yeah. And so it's about what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, Substack works. Instagram works. I I'm I'm over on X, Twitter, whatever we call it this month, and because I have to be for realm makers, and I pay attention to the conversations over there. But I'm not necessarily engaging with people and posting all the time over there. It's like I'll open the app maybe once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it can really get to be a lot. And so at a certain point, you get to choose where you're going to be.
Hmm.
And that's definitely, I hear what you're saying and such. And I understand like Facebook is where the moms are because my husband also, he works in youth ministry with sword fighting. And he's on Facebook constantly with not with for himself, but like he's updating his page constantly because that's where the moms are. He's
Yeah,
running ads there for his camps because that's where the moms are. And that's legit. So go where your audience is when you
yeah,
can. Um, I should be on TikTok. I cannot get past the security issues. I'm sorry, and I do not have the money to buy a separate smartphone. I don't, and
yeah,
I I I try to, and I'm so close, and I'm like, I just can't do this. I don't know. I
yeah,
think I was just raised by parents who were too protective of those things. Like, and they not because they
yeah,
were Luddites, because they were techies. They were just like, don't do this. It's stupid.
yeah,
So, but where I can be active, like on Instagram and then on my email newsletter, that's where I'm mostly doing things. Then I cross post to Facebook because I do have
yeah.
a loyal fan base there that will follow me. But know where you need to be there as much as you can,
Hmm.
and focus on that and don't worry about not being everywhere else. And then if you
Yeah,
find after like 6 months, a year, I tell people like, do you have the data to prove this is a good idea or bad idea? Like, well, no, but so and so said in a podcast that I should switch to this. And I'm like, but do you have 6 months of data to say that your stuff is not doing well? And when I say
hmm,
6 months of data, do you have 6 months of really trying consistently for, every single week trying and then proving this isn't working? And they go, oh, well, no, I've only done 3 weeks and I didn't post half the time. I'm like, well, then you don't really have enough
yeah,
data to say, like, part of doing this for yourself and being rebellious is understanding that strategic risk and saying, I think this can work for me because of what I've studied. It
right.
means you're going to fail sometimes. It's okay. Failing's going to happen. JJ and I have both failed at different
Yep,
things. We can definitely
big
share lots
time.
of stories where you're like, okay, that was a, I have
That
like a
was a
couple,
bad idea.
I kind of written off some of my things. I'm like, if it came out in 2020 or 2020, those are bad years for me. COVID hit me hard and I had a lot of
Yeah,
personal stuff and
same.
choices were made, but you learn from them. And so that's why it is
Yeah,
important to do the low risk when you can, because you can make less expensive mistakes.
yeah.
But if you've made expensive mistakes, it doesn't mean that you can't learn from it and go on. It doesn't mean that you have to give up because
Yeah, and
we've
that's
all
and
made
that's
them.
another thing because and circling back around, you don't give up just because you make a mistake. But here's the deal. One of the reasons you don't need to be in every single spot
Hmm.
is because you're going to have people in your community that are in the places that you may not necessarily be.
Hmm.
And let's take realm makers for example. One of the things that's interesting about realm makers is our audience is very fractured. And what I
Oh, yeah.
mean by that
Oh,
is
yeah.
about 45% of our audience only follows us on Instagram. And they have zero clue that there is a Realm Makers Consortium Facebook group over here on Facebook. Zero clue. And I have actual conversations with people who are like, "What is that? What is the RMC?" And I'm just like, "Huh." And that's when I started really digging into our data. And then I look over here on Facebook and it's the same thing. It's like we have people who only follow us on any now, sure, there's people that cross promote and follow our pages, but they're only engaging with us on certain platforms. And then guess what? We got people over here on X that they only follow us on X. And
Hmm.
so, you know, when we put something out there, and this is kind of looking at thinking about, you market to your community, but the thing you also need to do is you need to encourage and challenge your community to kind of market for you. And
Mhm.
so if we put something out and we say, hey guys, everybody go share this. We want you guys to really help us spread the word about the Aurora contest or the Realm Awards or whatever. I can put that out there, and that post is like everywhere. It's
Yeah.
on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on X, it's in the Realm Sphere, it's on Discord. I don't know how to get there, but it shows up in places that, and I don't have to worry, and my social team media team doesn't have to worry about being everywhere. And so, listen, if one of the things that you need to do is you need to kind of make your fans sort of the hero of your marketing,
Yeah.
not necessarily the product. And what that means is like, hey guys, help me get the word out about this. And if you're not active on Facebook, I can guarantee you one of your fans or somebody in your community is going to be somebody that's very active over on Facebook, and they're going to share it, and it's going to get some attention over there. So,
Mhm.
but so that's a low risk thing to do, is just kind of make them the hero of your marketing. And if your community feels cool for sharing your work, they're going to do it for free. That's another thing.
Mhm.
So make them feel like they're doing something that's fun. And I I tell this story all the time. I discovered Brandon Sanderson in 2007. All right.
Okay.
Okay, and this is where I'm going with this, is because
Mhm.
you don't necessarily ask people to promote for you. You sort of give them a reason to brag about the fact that they found you first.
Okay.
And I I remember when I heard that Robert Jordan passed away. I was a big Wheel of Time fan, and I
Mhm.
heard that this kid named Brandon Sanderson was going to finish
I
the book.
remember that too.
And
Yeah.
I'm
I was
like,
like, "Who is
"Who
this
is
guy?"
this fool? Who is this fool?" I went to Books a Million, and I grabbed a copy of Mistborn. He had only put out 4 books at that time. And
Mhm.
I put that book off the shelf. I grabbed a coffee. I sit down in the cafe, and I started reading. And 3.5 hours later, I'm 150 pages into the book. The spine is broken, and I'm having to buy the book. And I tell that story all the time when people are like, "Oh, I'm a Sanderson fan." I was like, "No, I'm a Sanderson fan." I'm gonna brag about the fact that I discovered him in 2007. You just now figured who he was out. But no, that's what you got to do. Is don't ask people to promote you. Give them a reason to brag about the fact that they found you first.
Mhm.
Because if you can do that and you can make them feel valuable, they're going to go out there and you're going to grow your brand, you're going to grow your story worlds, you're going to grow your books, and those things will spread in a unique way. So
Yep.
that's my advice on that.
And I love the way you phrase it, because what it comes down to, especially when you're building that relationship with people and you're connecting with them and
Hmm.
everything, you also can't be afraid to ask and understand that some people will shut the door. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people have to get over with. And first of all, I do believe this, but also I listened to a really good podcast today that reminded me of this. That's really important. Um, but it is an important thing. And when I look back to my own success, a lot of it comes down to making those asks. And I know for a lot of authors out there, that's really scary, especially if you
Hmm.
have social anxiety, especially if you're raised to not be a bother. And I'm putting that in quotes for anyone who's listening to this in the podcast later. If you were raised to not do that, oh, that's pushy. Oh, that's this. Nice
Hmm.
people don't do that. Well,
Right.
here's the thing. If you're building a relationship and people love your books, then they're happy to do it. The same way that, like, if you have a relation with people in your real life, you know, and they're like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm creating, like, say if you had a friend and they do really great art and you're like, wow, more people need to know about this. Your art is amazing. And they're like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to tell people about your art. I'm going to share this around. You're building that kind of relationship with your readers who, again, they're heroes of the story. Make the ask because they want to share it, and
Hmm.
encourage them to love it, encourage them in their enjoyment of it. Part of that, creating that relational aspect, is getting excited when they're excited about it and saying, they're like, oh, for example, if you had something where someone just sent in like a huge package of fan art that their kids did of Iggy and Oz and everything, you'd
Hmm.
want to do something to connect with it. That's pretty awesome. These are people who are saying, I love your stuff. And so you want to build that out and you want to ask. Like, my first ask, if I got that, would be, I'll keep your kids' names covered, but can I share this so that other people understand, have that opportunity to enjoy this too? Other moms say, wow, their kids love this so much, they made art. Maybe that will
Yeah.
help my
Yeah.
kids to love it too. And the same way, look, someone gets a positive review. Hey, can I share that? Because if you
Yeah.
love this, all they have to do is say yes. They don't even have to share it themselves. They just have to give permission. And then you can share
Right.
that
Right.
review, and more people will get to love the book that they already loved. So you're making them you're making them the hero, and you're
Right.
continuing the joy of this book that they've already enjoyed and that they want to share about, the same way that you love the Sanderson thing and wanted to be the first person to brag about that.
Yeah.
So engage with that. It will feel awkward. I know that,
Yeah.
especially if you're the kind of person that you're hyper introverted, or you have this rigid sense of, well, these are my 3 friends that I'm deeply close with. Everything else feels artificial. You have to sort of engage with it and realize there's different kinds of acquaintances and friendships and connections. And it can be tricky. This is where the personality thing comes in, where some people just naturally have personalities that can work with that, and other people go, well, that's really hard.
Hmm.
But you need to give yourself permission to ask people. And guess what? They can also say no. They can say, I don't want you to share this review for this reason. I don't want to do this thing for here. And you say, you know what? Thank you. But don't be afraid to make those asks. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm skipping out on social media because it's really stressful. Can you find me over here? We're going to
Hmm.
do fun things over here. I'm going to ask you to come over here because it's going to be great. And I'm going to give you exclusives over here. Can we do that over here? And just don't be afraid to continue to ask, with the understanding that, first of all, again, we're assuming here your book is well made. You understand your audience. You have a message that, again, if you're, for those Christians out there, if you have a message that's really awesome and you believe you should be sharing it, then guess what? You got to share it, even if it's awkward.
Yeah.
um, but it's a muscle you have to keep working. And the people that you see getting opportunities are people who are asking and who are creating those environments. And I am sure JJ's had plenty of times where he's heard no's or things didn't work out. I've
Oh yeah.
had plenty of times where I've made offers and have people say no, nope, don't care. And then you say, well, I'm just going to keep serving, and I'm going to keep asking and keep delivering those fun things and building that relationship. And I think that's one of the hardest things that people don't talk enough about with marketing,
Right.
that I think authors in particular get discouraged about. And I think when you do these low risk things, where if you can build things where you are giving them something for free, then you can at least say, I'm asking for a reason. I'm doing something fun.
Yeah.
And then if they reject it, that's okay. They're not your people.
Right. Right. And I think that you have to be so generous with your creativity that people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that they feel guilty about not sharing your work, but
No, we
they
don't do
want.
guilt things here.
Yeah, they want to share your
Mm-hmm.
work. You want to be so generous that they want to share your work. They want to give back because look, at the end of the day, attention's currency, and if someone spends it on you, then you want to give that back to them in some sort of
Mm-hmm.
story or some sort of way. And I think it was Seth Godin. I can't remember exactly, but he said that marketing isn't necessarily about buying ads. It's making people feel like they've been seen. And
Mm-hmm.
so when somebody sends me something and says, my son hates reading, but
Yep.
he loved Iggy and Oz and has not stopped reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And when's the next one come out? Well, that makes me want to say, oh man, I need to sit down and write. That and then I think I'll message back or I'll comment back and say, you know what, you're right. The next book does need to get to work. Thank your son. Tell your son thank you for helping me get motivated because I wasn't motivated to write today, and now I am.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the type of things. It's just like those are the most valuable things. Somebody telling a friend about your story, it will beat 1,000 people scrolling past your ad because 1,000 people scrolling past your ad, you may get 1 or 2 clicks. But if somebody tells their friend about your story and says, hey, this guy made my son want to read, that is value. That is more value than I've ever had before. And, this is where I talk about collaboration a lot. If you can
Oh yeah.
collaborate with other authors, do it. People may not realize this, but Steve Raza's Mercury Hell shows up in
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5, pretty much every Iggy and Oz book, or he's mentioned in every. And Iggy shows up in Mercury on Course's books. And then I have an entire short story where that was published by Havoc that, you know, Iggy FaceTimes Mercury. And then we put out this collaboration with me and Steve and Jason. And I like
Yep.
to say, look, my readers grow up to become Jason's readers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jason's readers those same readers, they grow up to be Steve's readers. And so it's this lot. If you can figure out a way to sort of make this a collaboration work in that way, then it's win for everybody. And you're
Mm-hmm.
not worried about IP and all this type of stuff like this. Just have
Mm-hmm.
fun with your creativity, collaborate
Yep.
with people. And I I think that if you can engage with key contributors, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
If you can engage with people who are willing to contribute to your success, not necessarily engage with influencers, engage with people who can contribute to your success and who are contributing to your market and who are willing to share your work. That is something that you can't get back. That is the marketing that you everybody wants. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that hard. What it takes is time to invest into building a relationship with everybody, which is what we come back to.
Yeah.
Sit down at the campfire. It's already built. Let's discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let me just one of my favorite stories
Yep.
is
Go ahead.
let me do this from a spiritual standpoint.
Oh yeah. Talk.
When when Jesus is being crucified, Peter's sitting over there over a charcoal fire. All right, and over that charcoal fire, he denies Jesus 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the first thing that Peter does after Jesus is dead? He goes back to the life he knew before. He just goes back to being a fisherman. And he's sitting there in the boat with the rest of the disciples, and somebody comes on shore, and it's Jesus. But he doesn't realize it's Jesus. And Jesus says, "Throw the net on the other side," and they start pulling all the fish in. And they realize that's Jesus on the shore. And Peter gets out and swims as fast as he can back to shore. And there is Jesus over a charcoal fire
Mm-hmm.
fixing breakfast. The same type of fire that Peter had denied him previously.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about that story is that Jesus meets us where we're at in our midst of our
Mm-hmm.
failures. No matter how many times we failed him, he always meets us there. And he turns our failures into success because he believes that we can do something great for his kingdom. And so when I say bring people around and sit down and build a fire, that's what I'm saying. Is sit down and just have conversations with your community. Have conversations with people who want to experience story. When we're doing the Realm Makers Expo, it's about telling people, look, you may feel like your fandoms have failed you and your values and the things that you love, but man, we have a lot of amazing creators here and some new fandoms that you can discover. And
Mm-hmm.
we're building a fire and we're inviting you all to come and sit down and be a part of it and experience story through film, through animation, through comic books, through all these different types of things. And so when I use that analogy of a fire, I really mean it because that I think is what is missing with a lot of authors in their marketing. It build that relationship with people
Mm-hmm.
because the relationship is what's going to keep people coming back and buying your books over and over and over again. It
Yep.
takes work and it's a long game approach, but at the end, it's really worth it.
Yep. I think that's a great takeaway for all of this. And it really is affirmed, especially in, again, Christians. This is what we're supposed to do anyway. We're supposed to like love God and love people. This is part of loving
Mhm.
people. So, another way, if you're thinking about this, you know, to quote Thomas Umstead, who's another, I've just listened to one of his podcasts, love your reader, love
Mm.
the people. When you're thinking about it's hard and you're thinking about this is difficult and stressful, think about how you can love the people and connect with the people that you really want to reach with your books and the ways you want to connect with them and let that help you to show up. And I'll be honest, even for people who do this regularly, who you're like, oh, well, Janine and JJ, you have like these superpowers. I have to make sure that I do the work and get my stuff written. I don't always sit down. Like if I'm waking up and I'm not feeling great that morning, I still have to create that email newsletter content to get out there. Like loving is sacrificial sometimes. Okay. You can always get to do it when it feels good. And sometimes you do it doesn't go well and you have to like, redo it or stuff like that. It's not easy, but it is worth it. And I think in a culture that is more and more isolated,
Mhm.
it's one of the ways you can really be rebellious and stand out to be authentically connecting with people who need your stories. So, kind of wrapping this all up with this, we're starting from a place of your book itself is solid and worth it. So, we're assuming that here. So, if you're like, well, but I'm doing all that and everyone says my book is awful, isn't for them. there are other episodes to talk about what this is telling you about your book or about your targeting. So that's, with the assumption that your book is solid, your cover is solid, all of that's put well together, and you know who you want to reach with it. You know what their takeaways are. You know what you want to give them. You're writing books for kids who, boys who hate reading, so they can delight and enjoy it and everything, and so their moms can have a little less grief in their lives from that as well, which is a huge thing. One of I focused on writing is I write books that are fun and fast-paced escapes that have a bit of depth to them, and I unapologetically do that. Does it have my Christian worldview? Of course. Does it have things very intentional? Of course. Do I obsess about things behind the scenes? Of course. But what I want to hear from someone is, I read your book in like 3 hours. Where's the next one? I write those kind of unapologetic adventures and dives into world building. That's what I do. And so I know I want to connect with people who want that kind of story. So if you know that, and you have that in mind, if you know what people are looking for, then just keep showing up and keep creating that fire. And you don't have to be everywhere. And in fact, you can make crazy choices like I'm doing, like JJ said, find me on Substack, or like me, where I've resolutely not been on TikTok because I just can't get over it. And I know people like, I probably have readers on TikTok that I'm never gonna sorry guys, you're awesome, but you can find me on YouTube. That's one of the reasons I started to be on YouTube more, because I can do shorts here and build this audience here, since I won't do TikTok. So we're not, be rebellious. Don't be on platforms that really make you uncomfortable, but show up mindfully where you are. And yes, we're going to beat the drum here, but you need an email list of some kind. If you're not sure to start, get a Substack. It's free, and then you can get the consent to hop somewhere else if you want to later. But you need that space. You need that Patreon or something where people can find you and you can create that space. You're not going to find that on Instagram or Facebook. Their algos have insane ducklings running them. Like they just do not work. So do the work, show up, and then be rebellious by showing up and being relational and connecting.
Right.
Whether you're a girl, whether you're a dude, whether you're like naturally super outgoing or not, do the work of making those connections. You won't see it at the start. And something else that I hope encourages you, that might be kind of weird, like JJ's made some big sales numbers. I've made some numbers. I'm assuming both of us have at least, are profitable on our stuff. But this doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to hit it big. No one can predict that.
Yeah.
But one thing I had to really come to terms with, and I think it was something that I really had to face as I was starting to get another YouTube channel and going, okay, I'm starting from scratch again. You are just as relevant, and it's just as important to create those small spaces as big spaces. And if things grow and you get to grow into big spaces and things grow like at Realm Makers, that's great. If you are just continuing to be faithful in a small space, that still counts. Now, if you're being faithful in a small space and going thousands of dollars into debt, we have questions, and that's not, again, we're talking about low risk things here.
Yeah.
But do not despise the small places. Think about the boutiques in your small town or places that they've never gotten big. Maybe they've been there for 30 years and are never huge. But that doesn't make you appreciate them any less or value them. And so when we're talking about being countercultural, it's not always about growing big, because you can't ultimately control that. There are things you can do, but ultimately, marketing is marketing. God's in control. You can do all the right things, and someone else can like sprout up huge and do none of that. It happens. But even if the most is that you create a small space and a campfire that is connecting with people, that is getting those books into the hands of the right readers and is creating that space, you are still allowed to be a small business. You don't have to be a big one to be relevant. You don't have to grow up huge to be relevant, and you don't have to be huge to take it seriously and love your readers.
Right.
So, value and treasure those small spaces as well. And then as you grow, if you grow, then that's great. And don't let growing big mean that you lose track of that, because we've all served the news how many horror stories, people who got huge and then have massive scandals. The more I hear it, the more I'm like, Lord, if you ever grow me big, please give me such a big accountability group so I don't be stupid like that. Like, it's like, wow, I want to get huge, but also I don't want to be stupid like this author or this leader or this thing.
We've had a lot of them in Christian entertainment.
Yeah,
whether it's
so much.
fiction, film, music. We've
Mhm.
had a lot of scandals, and it's unfortunate. And I
Mhm.
think humility is
Mhm.
something that is something easy to say we want, but
Mhm.
at times it can become hard to grasp. And so constantly staying grounded in your faith and accountability
Mhm.
to the people
Mhm.
who love you and care about you in this industry, I think is
Mhm.
important.
Yep. And humble, service oriented, and keep showing up. And if you're finding that you're really, really, really getting discouraged,
Mm,
it could be a sign you're not in the right place. It could be a sign that maybe your life season is horrible and you take a step back. I don't know that about you, but give it a try at doing that and just keep showing up. Do you have any
right.
final thoughts for our listeners as you wrap this up?
This is a tough industry. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. It's not easy, even in the
Mm-hmm.
Christian market. I struggle with
Especially in the
it.
Christian market.
I know it's not. Um,
Christian market is like brutal.
it is cutthroat, and but if I get it. Insecurity is a thing. I
Mm-hmm.
have dealt with anxiety disorder. I struggle with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with depression. I know the how hard it is when you're trying to launch something and it just feels like you're shouting and nobody's listening to you. And at the same time, it's just like there are people out there like us who have been there,
Mm-hmm.
and we have launched, we have failed, we have launched, we have failed, we have launched, found success, and then we failed
And
again.
shut down our publishing house of 7 years. Like these things
Yeah.
happen.
And so and then there's times where you launch something and it's successful and you
Mm-hmm.
realize uh I gotta let's for example, a podcast I had a very successful podcast, but I wanted to do what I'm doing for realm makers. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
called to serve the community. And I was like, I got to shut the podcast down,
Mm-hmm.
not because
Okay.
I want to, because I need to have the creative space over here to do this. This is more important to me at the moment. And there will be moments like that where you come to a crossroads and you realize you have to take a step back and serve. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's something else like sometimes success can put you in just as many hard places
Yeah.
as failures, and that can be challenging too. I it was good to hear that too, because I was wondering where your podcast went, because I'm like, that is so branded to perfection with that. And I'm sure it's doing great, but then it's gone. But yeah, choosing to step back from that. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
It was a
I'm
hard decision,
I'm
and I tried to I
sure.
I tried to bring it back, and I was
Yeah.
gonna record like 10 episodes and put them in the
Yeah.
queue. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the headspace, and it's like
Mhm.
you sometimes you have to choose what I have to say no to this over here in
Mhm.
order to save time creatively for this over here. And
Mhm.
that's I think the hard part when it comes to getting in this industry is building relationships and friendships and networking with the right people, but also knowing that there's times where you have to say no and it's nothing personal. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's just making those choices is the wise thing to do with that, and you're constantly having to do that. So thank you for sharing that. Make I just recently stopped doing editing for people after like years of doing that, and I said, you know, I have to write my books, and I love this, but you got to keep doing what you got to do and pray about it, and then make those
yeah,
changes, and keep moving forward, and also trust that other people are gonna keep doing things as well and being part of that community. Well, thank you so much for being here, JJ. And I mean, you've been talking about all the stuff with Realm Makers and shouting that out, which is great because I am very much a fan of that too and what they've done. So I'm glad you're able to come on this live stream. But do you have anything else that you want people to check out? Anyone who out there who might be have middle grade readers who don't like reading, or moms who need that?
I tell everybody that I've had people come up to me at the homeschool conventions and
Mm-hmm.
say, "Hey, I hear you're the guy to come up to and get buy the books if you want your kids to stop reading Dog Man." So,
Mm-hmm.
if
Oh
I have
gosh.
nothing wrong with Dog Man, I have no problem
Mm-hmm.
with Diary of the, but if you want a book that I purposely wrote it for with meat and chapters and fast pace for the purpose of getting kids who don't like to read to actually read. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why Iggy and us. I'm a pulp writer for kids. I will say that through the roof. It is fast paced adventure. So, um, that's what I love to do. The problem is only I can only put out about one a month or one a year, and they're 23,000 words, which means the rapid release will never work for me. So, but you can find those books out on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com, any of those
Mhm,
places like that. Just type in Iggy and Oz, and they'll pop up. Or
mhm,
you can find me on Substack at jjjohnson.substack.com.
mhm. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again for making the time to do this during one of your craziest seasons. I know when I shot you email, I'm like, either he's gonna love this because he's like, yeah, he can talk about realm makers, or he's gonna go, Janine, are you serious? Like, so I'm really glad it was the second one that you made time for this live stream, and I hope to have you on again in the future to talk about some other stuff.
All right. Thank you for having me. I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
And for everyone listening, go forth and be awesome.